Okay, guys, so this is going to be the review session for you guys. So last night I actually conducted the review session at 5:30. For those of you who didn't make it, I promised to record it and put it up on Canvas for you guys. However, unfortunately, when I got done with the recording and I clicked to upload it, I had some sort of file corruption and I lost the entire video that I was supposed to upload to you guys for the review session. So you guys are a little pissed about that. You can imagine me about put my head through both of my computer monitors once I saw that. So what I'm going to do now for you guys is essentially I'm just going to go over briefly what I went over for the review session. So those of you who weren't at the review session, you're going to miss out on the questions that were asked about the review and about the exam. However, you're still going to get the basic review that I gave for them. As well as this is an opportunity where I'm going to say, since you are missing that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask me any additional questions that you have about any of these concepts. I'm going to go through this relatively briefly, just like I did last night. But for the most part, this should help you or give you some sort of indication of what's partially going to be covered or what might be covered on the exam. So I'm going to jump in here. So know the effects of resistance training on muscular strength, hypertrophy, and bioenergetic adaptation. So for this, I'm essentially saying what is happening to these three things, or what is going on with these three things when you go through resistance training. So we should know that resistance training leads to increased muscular strength in terms of increased contractile units within the muscles, as well as increased neural drive. So the nervous system that is promoting strength gains, there's the nervous system that's controlling strength and controlling strength gains is becoming more efficient. So we should know those things. For hypertrophy, we know with resistance training, we get larger muscles. We should know things about that. We should know the components of hypertrophy, the differences between sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar hypertrophy. Sarcoplasmic being increased in the cytoplasm of the cell itself. So essentially, you're increasing the amount of substrate available for the muscle to use for exercise. And then myofibrillar hypertrophy, it has to do with increase in the contractile units of the muscle. So increasing in the Z lines, in the actin and myosin filaments. With more of those sarcomeres in line now, you can produce more force. And then bioenergetic adaptations. Essentially, I'm talking about this is building off of the first exam. What's happening to the phosphagen, glycolytic, and oxidative system as a result of resistance training. So if you're doing endurance style resistance training, you're probably tapping into more of the glycolytic or oxidative system. If you're doing strength or power resistance training, you're probably tapping into more of the phosphagen and glycolytic system. So what styles of training are going to affect those energy systems, and then how are those energy systems going to be affected? Meaning the phosphagen system. You'll probably have greater utilization of phosphocreatine and greater enzymatic capacity and utilization. With the glycolytic system, you have greater glycogen stored within the muscle as well as increased enzyme capacity. Same with the oxidative system, right? Increased oxidative delivery, meaning angiogenesis or more blood supply, more capillaries surrounding the muscle, as well as you're going to have increased oxygen utilization within the muscle because you have more mitochondria. They're larger, they're more efficient. Know what neural adaptations occur at the beginning of resistance training. So we should know about rate coding and about synergistic effect of neuron firing. So beginner gains, where you see people go to the gym after they haven't gone for a long time and they'll have 25% increases in their strength in just like 6 weeks to like 3 months. That is beginner gains. That's mostly because of neuronal adaptations. Neuromuscular adaptations are leading you to those gains. So you see like fad exercise trends where they're like, oh, we took this person and they gained their squat strength by 50% within the first month. That's when you're going to see the largest increases. If you took someone who's been trained for 2 years and put them through the same protocol, they're likely not going to see the same increases because they already have the neuromuscular adaptation. They're already at the most efficient firing for muscular strength, and therefore they're not going to see the same gains that the beginner would. But no, essentially for this, know what neural adaptations are occurring. Hypertrophy, I just talked about that. Know the force curve for movement. So essentially what I'm saying is just understand what's going on. So if I say like a descending force curve, I'm talking about like a bench press or squat. And we've all felt this before. When you get to the bottom of the bench, you get to the sticking point, or you get to the bottom of the squat, the very bottom or the very lowest point, if that is the hardest point to move in, and that is because you are the most mechanically disadvantaged to produce force in that position. And so it would be said, as you go through that movement, you are on a descending force curve. As you complete the movement, your force production capabilities go down, which is the opposite of per se a hamstring curl. In the hamstring curl, at full extension now, you are at your most mechanically advantaged. So as you go through a hamstring curl, as you go to full extension, you are the most mechanically advantaged to make that movement. Versus at full flexion, you're more mechanically disadvantaged. And then like a bicep curl has like a U or a V shape force curve, in that the mid portion of the bicep curl is actually the most mechanically advantaged to produce force. And you don't need to get into why these things occur. Essentially, as a brief explanation, depending on the joint used and the origination and insertion of the muscles, it's going to cause different force curves. But essentially, just know the general basis of what those are and how they're different for different movements. For protein intake, I'm talking specifically about daily protein intake as well as feeding strategies. So we talked about low dose, intermediate dose, or bolus dosing, where you took either 10 to 20, 30 to 40, or excuse me, 10 grams, or you did 20 to 30, or you did 40 or up bolus feeding. And we said that intermediate feeding, that 20 to 30, is the sweet spot to hit that stimulates maximum muscle protein synthesis without really wasting any protein. We should know about those feeding strategies and how we would implement them. Power production curve, essentially, this is talking about the curve between velocity of a movement and the force of a movement. As you can imagine, if the force required for a movement is high, you likely can't move that thing very fast. So the velocity will be low. Versus if you can move something really fast, if I have a pencil or a pen and I move it really quickly, right? The only reason that I can move it really quickly is because the force required to move it is low. If this weighed per se 150 pounds, I would not be able to move it nearly as fast. Now, power, remember, is a manifestation or a combination of velocity times force. And so if you can take a moderately heavy object and move it fast, that's going to elicit the highest amount of power. So remember, power is force times displacement over time, or force times velocity. And so a power curve is essentially saying at the extreme end of force production and at the extreme end of velocity, there's not a lot of production of the alternative. So when you have high force production, it's low velocity. When you have high velocity, it's low force production. But somewhere in the middle, because of the way the power relationship works, that is where your peak power is going to manifest. No calorie count and macronutrient distribution. We should know the macronutrient calorie density. We should know that fats are 9, protein and carbs are 4, as well as we should know the relative amount of calories that you need to eat if you want to lose, let's say, a pound of fat per week. You know that a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So if you are burning 3,000 calories per day, you want to lose a pound of fat, you need to ingest 2,500 calories per day, which puts you at a 500 calorie per day deficit, which means 3,500 calories per week, and therefore a pound of fat. So we should know things about that. Know the structure of the muscles and what they're responsible for. This is from chapter exam 1, kind of. Know what actin and myosin are, the Z lines are, know what troponin and tropomyosin are, and how those are all intertwined and how they produce force, or how they help they produce force. You're not going to need to characterize an action potential producing force like you did in the essay question for the first exam, but you're going to need to draw on those to answer some questions. Force velocity relationship, I essentially just explained that with power curve. Cardiac drift. Cardiac drift is a phenomenon we talked about where essentially your heart becomes less efficient over prolonged exercise periods. So essentially know what's happening to heart rate, know what's happening to stroke volume, know what's happening to blood distribution. We should know that blood is being shunted away from the internal organs and instead being distributed to the working muscle and to the skin to allow for heat dissipation and for exercise intensity to increase. We should know factors of agility, know about size, know about rate of force development, and your power production. Work and power formulas, know the components. So work is force times displacement, and power is force times displacement over time, or force times velocity. We should know the components of that formula. Know the effects of aerobic training on. So we should know what aerobic training is doing to VO2 max, lactate threshold, oxygen delivery, and oxygen usage. We should know that VO2 max is going up because you're increasing your ability to utilize more oxygen by increasing enzymatic efficiency within the mitochondria, as well as you're increasing mitochondrial size and density. Lactate threshold is going up as you stress the mechanisms that remove acidosis from the body. It's going to raise your lactate threshold. Oxygen delivery is going up. We have angiogenesis, which means that we have more capillaries within the muscle, as well as you're increasing your relative ability to transfer oxygen from the lungs to the working muscle, which means that oxygen delivery is going up. And finally, oxygen usage. This is essentially measured as proxy measure It's essentially measured by proxy by VO2 max. And VO2 max is your body's maximal ability to consume oxygen, which again is just your oxygen usage. Changes in stroke volume and cardiac output. We should know changes in stroke volume and cardiac output during exercise, as well as what occurs after chronic training. So during exercise, stroke volume and cardiac output obviously go up, but after chronic training, like I have here, chronic or cardiac adaptations to training, after chronic aerobic training, you're going to see heart rate at rest go down, stroke volume at rest go up, and cardiac output at any time is going to be higher in a trained population versus an untrained population. RMR is important for weight loss, so we should know what RMR is, resting metabolic rate. We should know how we can change that, specifically how important lean muscle mass is. Remember that lean muscle mass or lean tissue is metabolically active, and therefore that is what is driving RMR, meaning the amount of energy your body needs to stay at rest. You have a larger individual with more muscle mass, they're going to have a higher RMR than someone with less muscle mass. And that being said, just because someone is larger doesn't mean their RMR is going to be higher. It's dependent on that metabolic tissue, specifically usually skeletal muscle tissue. Lactate threshold. Let's see where I lost my spot here. Sorry. Lactate threshold, event rate threshold. Know what those are. Remember that lactate threshold is important because that's the point which acidosis accumulates. Remember, lactate is not the problem. It functions as a buffer and can be used as a fuel source, and therefore it is not what we are worried about. Lactate threshold. Acidosis is instead what we are worried about at that point. Know about vegetory threshold, right? What's occurring there. Caloric restriction, talked about that quick. Bicarbonate buffering system, know essentially what the bicarbonate buffering system is doing for us. Heat acclimation and its time frame. I'm not going to nickel and dime you guys and pick out little small things, but we should know acclimation and what's occurring, essentially different mechanisms that are changing within the body. You're not going to need to know the basics of like, oh, what's happening to this small individual thing, but I want you to understand the overall concept of what's occurring during heat acclimation. Adaptations to elevation, know what's happening to us acutely and both chronically. Adaptations to the cold, this is in tandem with the ones in heat. So essentially know the basic gist of what's occurring when you adapt to different hot or cold environments. Know humidity's effects on exercise. This is especially important for us in Florida here. Know what humidity does to exercise. Remember that remember that if you exercise in a highly humid environment, the evaporation of sweat off of your skin is diminished. And that evaporation is what allows you to dissipate heat. So therefore, in a humid environment, since you are not evaporating as much sweat, you're not dissipating as much heat, and therefore you're going to have a higher core body temperature, which is going to lead to diminished performance, specifically or especially aerobically. And then know cells responsible for muscle repairs. So know that neutrophils, monocytes, satellite cells are involved. You don't need to know their exact functions, but know what cells are generally involved. Know this one right here, know the relative rep range, intensities, and rest times required for every muscular training style. So know what rep ranges, what percent 1 RM, and what rest times you need for strength training, hypertrophy training, and endurance training. This is going to be very important for your exam. And then finally, know what training stimulates increase efficiency in biogenetic systems. So essentially know what training does. This is a repeat from earlier. Know what training styles do to specific bioenergetic systems. Know the name and function of immune cells. So again, you don't need to know the function of the immune cells, just kind of know what they're involved in. And then know our heart blood flows. This is kind of a repeat before. Know heart blood flow and how blood gets from the heart to the working muscle, back to the heart, to the lungs, and then back to the heart and again to the working muscle. With that being said, just a few things to wrap up here. I should have led with this. Sorry. For those of you who are at the review session, the test exam time has been boosted to 60 minutes. So I previously said it was 90 for the first exam 1, and I had to cut it down to 45 minutes to diminish the amount of cheating that was going to occur during exam 2. I got some emails from concerned individuals about the short period of time. I'm having a stroke here. The short period of time allowed for the exam. So that being said, there's about 41 questions on the exam, or 43 questions on the exam, I believe. That means that with the essay question, even if it took you 17 minutes to complete the essay question, which it shouldn't, it should probably take about 5 or so, that you have over a minute to complete each conceptual question. Again, this is double the amount of time that's usually allowed for standardized tests. So I feel and I hope that you agree that I'm being relatively fair here for you guys. If you know the content, like I've said before, I'm going to be frank with you. If you know the contents, you are going to answer the question relatively quickly. It does not take you minutes to answer a conceptual question, maybe to go back and check on something because you're like, oh, I see this answer now, so that means I need to change one before. But realistically, you should be able to finish a 40-question test in 20 minutes maximally, even if you're a slow test taker. It should only take you 5 seconds to read the question, maybe 15 seconds to answer it, and then you move on. But again, I'm trying to be flexible with you guys. I'm trying to be someone that you guys feel like you can work with for this. And so I bumped the test time back to 60 minutes. Once again, I'm going to beat this proverbial dead horse. Make sure you have Lockdown Browser downloaded. I am going to apologize in advance. I'm going to be pretty strict on this. If you download, if I get emails on Monday saying that Lockdown Browser is not working for you, that's tough. You've had 2 months or a month and a half to get this done, to get it downloaded. I know some previous classes you use Lockdown Browser. So that being said, though, if you email me tomorrow and you're like, hey, I'm having trouble with Lockdown Browser, I'll reach out to the company. I just want to let you know I'm going to be more lenient with you. However, I know the company will respond within a month or a week, or excuse me, within a day or two. So you should be able to get those errors fixed. On that note, though, if you do have errors, I'm going to repeat to you guys, don't come to me asking me what to do with the Lockdown Browser. You need to reach out to the company specifically. That being said, long story short, the test time is back up to 60 minutes. So I meet you guys in the middle. Hopefully you guys are happy about that. And then finally, for this course, I know the course is online, but I still enjoy presenting this material to you guys. I enjoy going through this material, reviewing it myself, and then trying to give it to you guys in the most digestible manner. I try to balance between the long drawn out lectures, as well as not go too short and provide the information too short a period of time that you can't understand what's going on. So I try to stay around that 50 to an hour per lecture and make it the best I could for you guys. Please, please, please fill out the SBIs, and please, please, please give me feedback or words of encouragement or words of constructive criticism, whatever it might be for this course. Remember again that I'm a human being and I have feelings, and if you are an ass to me, it's definitely going to hurt my feelings a little bit. But hey, that's the position I'm in. I'm the professor. I know some of you are going to hate me, and that's okay. I've been in that position too. I have lots of professors that I've disagreed with. That being said, though, please give me however you felt. If you didn't like the course and you think things could have been improved, please let me know in the write-ups that you could have. As well as if you did enjoy the course, please make sure you fill that out entirely, and please make sure that you give me comments saying what you did and didn't like about this course. This is my career goal, to teach this class, and I want to make sure that I'm presenting it to individuals in the most digestible and easy to understand manner. And so the only way I can really know is feedback from you guys. And I've done this previously for in-person classes, and it's gone well for me. But this is the first time I've taught this online. So if I ever have to teach it online again, I want to make sure that I can do it well and I can help you students learn the content that is required of you going forward in your career and specifically in this class. So that being said, I hope you guys had a great semester. I hope you guys enjoyed learning from me, listening to my lectures. I wish you guys the best of luck on your exam and in your future careers. And I'll see you later.